You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 55. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. Every week, I interview a professional in the industry, sharing stories of success and failure, viewpoints about art and the world, and information about this growing industry. Hey friends, fans, and enemies. I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. My guest today is registered dietitian and sports nutritionist Tara Gallimore. Tara completed a bachelor's degree in business and one in kinesiology, and she has a master's degree in nutrition. She's a board-certified and accredited nutritionist practicing in the province of Quebec, and she'll explain in the interview why it's important to know you're under the care of a qualified dietitian. I chose to interview her because she also teaches and gives talks at the École Nationale du Cirque, also known as ENC, also known as the National Circus School. So she's a dietitian who's intimately aware of the needs of circus artists specifically. I'm already kind of preparing my talk for the end of this interview, so I know it's going to be a long one. I want to get right into it. This interview is amazing. And shout out to not only my Patreons at patreon.com/theartistathlete for sponsoring this and every single podcast, but the people who follow me at _artist_athlete and submitted questions for me to ask Tara. Thanks, you guys. Get ready to hear your answers about supplements, vegetarian and veganism, protein powders, collagen. I'm still not quite sure what that is, but Tara is about to tell you all about it right now. Tara Gallimore.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. You were like an Instagram smash. I put on my stories like, what do you want to ask a circus nutritionist? And a lot of people had a lot of questions.
That's amazing.
So I want to start with, what is a nutritionist versus a person who is just talking about nutrition?
Okay, yeah, that's an excellent
what are your credentials?
That's an excellent question. So I'm actually a registered dietitian. Okay. And in Quebec, which is the province where I'm living in Canada, there's actually no difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. Both of those titles are protected by I guess you could say they're protected by the government in terms of, in order to call yourself a dietitian or to call yourself a nutritionist, you need to have the same credentials. Okay. So those credentials are, you have to have a bachelor's degree minimum in nutrition. You have to have passed a test afterwards. Oh, and you also need to have done an internship.
Okay.
Yes, and successfully passed your internship.
Right.
So
what does that look like? Like, what is that internship?
Okay, so I actually did a master's degree in nutrition. And so for us, we do the internship after we're done all of our studies. Okay. Where you are working in hospitals, in community centers. Wow. And also in food service. You have to do clinical, community, and food service, where you're working with different, like under the wing of different dietitians, and they're kind of your mentors. Cool. Helping you through and evaluating you and teaching you and making sure that you've got everything right. Nice. Yeah. So it's the degree, the internship, and then at the end of that, you have to pass an exam. Okay. In the rest of Canada, I believe it's a knowledge exam. In Quebec, it is a French exam, a 4-part French exam. And that's just to ensure that because it's a French province, you need to be able to provide people with healthcare services in their native language.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So in the rest of Canada, it's knowledge. In Quebec, it's knowledge, but also in French.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Whoa. That's intense. What was your favorite one of the three? You said food service, community, and hospital?
When I first got into it, I thought that I was going to like community more, but I ended up loving clinical.
Really?
Yes. So
Sure.
working one-on-one with people come in with various concerns, and you have to take into account what medications they're taking, what they typically eat, what diagnoses that they might have, and their history, both family history and personal history, their socioeconomic status. You kind of take all of that into account.
Wow.
And you try to come up with personalized recommendations that are suitable for that person and that person's budgets and that person's need.
Is that how you got to athletes?
Actually, so I did a degree in kinesiology before I did a master's in nutrition.
It never ceases to amaze me how many degrees Canadians have. Like, because like in the US, like you would be so much in debt from all of that. But I'm meeting all these Canadians who are like so well educated. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Sorry,
funny.
that's like total tangent. But...
No, it's funny you say that because when I was like discovering myself and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, my first degree was in business.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
So how many degrees do you have?
I have 3.
Work. I love that.
Yeah, I have 1 in business, concentrating on entrepreneurship, 1 in kinesiology, which means sports science.
Cool.
And then my master's is in nutrition.
Wow.
And I also wanted to add, because you were asking about the difference between dietitians and nutritionists.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought it was really important to mention that in Quebec, that's true that there's not a distinction between the two because both titles are protected and you need to have credentials to call yourself that.
Okay.
But in the rest of Canada, and as far as I'm aware, in a lot of the United States as well, although I wouldn't know that very well, there is no protection for the title of nutritionist. So you could be a child. You could have no education whatsoever.
Like I could call myself a nutritionist.
Anybody could call themselves a nutritionist. You included, but anybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your credentials are. There is absolutely no protection on that title. So my suggestion, even if you're living in a place where both titles are protected, just as a general rule, if somebody calls themselves a registered dietitian, you know that you're getting a credentialed healthcare professional that has to adhere to certain guidelines to make sure that they're providing you with adequate medical care that is backed up by science and not just some random thing that they read on the internet.
Right. Okay. That's really helpful. So you were saying you had a bachelor's in kinesiology?
Yes.
And so that brought you to athletes and nutrition.
Because I had that degree in kinesiology, because I've been an athlete for 10 years, and because I have an interest in working with athletes, that's kind of what led me into working with circus athletes. Because my very last internship, I spent 2 months at the McGill Sports Medicine Clinic. There's a dietitian there. She's amazing. Her name is Tiffany. She was my mentor. She was the one who was doing the lectures at the National Circus School. And because presumably because I had done such a good job and because I loved it so much, she had recommended me for that position. And so that's kind of how I started.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How do circus artists differ from other athletes?
Well, because circus is not just a sport, but also an art, I would say in that way it differs from other sports. Because anytime you have a sport that also has an aesthetic element to it, from a nutrition perspective, one of the things that you have to think about is that athletes are thinking a lot about their bodies, not just about what their bodies can do for them, but also how their bodies look. That can put people at increased risk of developing eating disorders. So from a nutrition perspective, that's a little bit different. But also, depending on the art that you're doing, some people will do things that will involve this is going to make me sound really stupid.
It's okay.
But you know how aerialists have to wrap that thing around themselves when they're in the air?
Oh my God, that's so awesome. Someone actually asked specifically about that.
No way, because I do
Instagram.
get questions about that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's it called?
There's a million names for it.
Okay.
You could call it just a waist wrap. When you have to wrap, if rope, aerial silk, sometimes straps artists, they wrap the apparatus around themselves to roll down, roll up.
Yes. Can you give me a term for it? Sorry that I can use?
A waist wrap.
A waist strap?
Yeah.
Waist wrap.
Yeah, like a wrap that goes around your waist. Whereas a leg wrap would be a wrap around your leg.
I see.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's other terms for it depending on other super nerdy stuff, but
okay,
for the purposes of this interview, I think waist wrap works fine.
Okay, perfect.
So what do people eat if they have to do a bunch of that stuff?
Oh my gosh, yeah, because that's a common problem.
Yeah.
If you know that you are going to be...
You can't eat a big meal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't eat a big meal, and there are certain things that are just going to stay in your digestive tract longer than other things. So those things that might stay a long time in your digestive tract and might make you feel like you want to vomit while you're performing include fiber, which you wouldn't think. Like, you don't want to eat a whole bunch of vegetables right before.
Sure.
You also don't want to eat too much protein or too much fat. So it's basically, you want to eat carbs and you want to eat things that are liquid.
Oh.
Because a liquid is going to go through your digestive system so much faster than a solid.
Okay.
And that way it's not sitting there making you feel sick.
So like a Gatorade or like something like that?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Potentially,
so
yeah.
So like sugary liquid that's going to give you like quick energy, but not like sit heavy in your stomach.
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of my students are super uncomfortable with the idea of having a sports drink because of the sugar content.
Right.
So one of the things that I'll recommend to them is, I have the name in French.
Say it in French.
Eau de noix de coco.
Oh, coconut water.
Thank you.
Yeah. Making me sound smart now.
Very. Yes, coconut water. Coconut water is a really nice thing to drink right before, if we're talking within like the 30 to 60 minutes before you're about to perform or practice.
Coconut water.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another thing could be a fruit. So any kind of fruit, it doesn't matter, whatever kind of fruits you enjoy.
Sure.
That's another thing that even though it's not a liquid, it's going to go through pretty fast.
Okay.
Another thing you can consider if you're in a position to do this is making a smoothie with the fruits. You could have fruit and coconut water together, and that would be really nice.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
I have a friend and she's super tiny and super just like buff. Her go-to is donuts. She eats a donut before, because she's like, it's quick sugar. I'm going to burn it off in the course of my act. Like, it doesn't sit heavy in my stomach. So how do you feel about that?
Well, the thing is, donuts are higher in fat than some of the other things that I mentioned.
Right.
And so for some people, eating that right before, they might feel ill. But your friend is not feeling ill eating that right before.
Yeah.
So I would say if you can eat a donut right before performing and you don't feel ill, I don't really see an issue with it.
Cool.
At the same time, like physiologically speaking, when we have something in our digestive tract that takes a really long time to digest, all of our blood goes to our digestive tract. But when we're trying to perform, we want that blood to be going to our muscles.
Right.
So even though we might not feel like vomiting necessarily, there are other things that we could have instead that would be similar to a donut in terms of the amount of energy that they would give us, but they wouldn't have the same effect in terms of taking the blood and directing it towards the digestive system.
That's
so much.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I was like, I almost didn't ask you that question because I was like, this is so circus specific. She may not know. And you like brought it up. You're like, waist straps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, oh my God, there's so much. Okay.
Okay.
The first thing I wanted to kind of circle back to is that question of aesthetics, powerlifters or people like that who are like specifically looking at function and numbers don't have to worry as much about their outward appearance.
Exactly.
Whereas for us, there is that component to it. So how do you walk that line? Like, this is a huge population that's at risk for eating disorders. What do you do? What do we do? Help us. Because I don't want an eating disorder, but I also want to look good and like get a job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so hard. And I appreciate that. There's so much pressure.
I know it's a hard one. Like, I don't even know if there's an answer that's not like change all societal standards.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Well, that's number one. It's not something that I can tell somebody.
It's not a diet thing. It's like a marketing issue.
Exactly. Yeah. When people ask me questions like that, like honestly, a lot of the questions that I get are about weight loss, about how to lose weight, about how to minimize fat mass, stuff like that. And I try, and I know that the students can tell that I'm doing this, and I don't think they're super happy about it, but I try to go around the question because I'm not there to teach people how to lose weight. Like, I don't see that as my job.
Right.
I see my job as to help people to perform well and to be the best athlete that they can be. And with the knowledge that I have, I know that telling people tips and tricks on how to lose weight, that's not necessarily going to be good for their mental health. That could put them down into a spiral. And at the end of the day, it's not very helpful because research shows that when people try to lose weight, I'm not talking about if people lose weight because they have like healthier habits or they change their habits.
Right.
I'm talking about if people change their habits with the sole intention of weight loss. So people who do that within 5 years, not only are they going to regain the weight that they lost, but they're going to gain more weight because we've kind of messed up their metabolism a little bit. So it's kind of like you don't just want to be a circus artist for the next year. I imagine that you want it to be a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give you tips that are going to help you in the short term, but not in the long term. So I try to like skirt the question in the sense that instead of focusing so much on weight, I'll try to teach people how to cue into their body's hunger and fullness cues and help them understand how to read how they feel. And I talk about nutrition more in terms of how it makes you feel than in terms of how it makes you look. And if you're successfully able to change your focus away from weight and focus it, and like fat mass and body composition, and focus it more so on how you feel and how it makes you perform, you are actually much more likely to reach your goals, even though it seems counterintuitive.
That is a really hard concept to tell someone who is constantly being told, like, you need to lose 2 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
You need to lose 5 pounds.
One of the students confided in me that, and I'm not going to give names or anything, but one of the students confided in me that the school has a reputation for eating disorders. And some of the parents are hesitant to send their children to the school for that very reason. This is something that I recently learned, and now it makes sense. It makes sense to me why I'm constantly getting questions about weight loss, because when I came in, I initially thought people would ask me about performance and how they can be a better athlete. But instead, they're getting pressure from teachers, coaches, management. I don't know exactly who, but they're getting a lot of pressure from people within the school who are telling them that they'll be more effective if they lose weight. And as a healthcare professional, I know that that's simply not true.
I got all of these questions from Instagram. I got all of these questions from friends, everything, but nobody asked me about disordered eating. And I thought that was so interesting because like my own struggles with weight, like, and every person I have met who's in this industry has at some point really struggled with that. Like, how do I feed my body and also look the way that people want me to look?
Absolutely.
So thank you for talking about that.
Oh my gosh, of course.
I hope it continues the discussion.
Yes.
But I have other questions and I really want to get to them. Oh my God, so many. Okay, you're a vegetarian.
Yes.
This was the other big thing that made me really happy that people were into is like vegetarian and veganism in circus or as athletes. There's a lot of like, I see it a lot in football players, probably because I'm from the US and football is like the thing. Oh. But they're like, a lot of them have come out as vegan. Proudly, there's a flag and a parade now for them. Oh my God. How does that work? Does it work? How do you get enough protein? All these questions.
Yeah, no, great question. So I'm actually vegan, which is the same, I mean, it's a subtype of being vegetarian.
And it's no animal products, like no eggs, no dairy, honey?
Personally, I don't eat honey, but I know that there are vegans who do eat honey, and I don't judge them for doing so. But I mean, technically...
No, this is like another part of disordered eating, right? It's like you shouldn't judge people for whatever they eat.
Oh my goodness. I know. But it can be part of the eating disorder, absolutely, that you feel... Actually, yeah, that's like a sign and symptom. If you start to notice that you're judging other people's eating choices, that is a sign that you might be on the path of developing an eating disorder. It's like if you're a nutrition professional, you're also at higher risk of developing an eating disorder. And even though like some people might consider my job to be like judging people's eating decisions, I don't see it like that at all. I see it as I'm a healthcare professional and I'm here to help people improve their health through nutrition. And that doesn't just mean like the physical nutrients in the food, but also their relationship with the food.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, but I think I got off track to the question about
vegetarianism.
Vegetarianism. Okay, yeah. So being vegan, yeah, means eating no animal products, which includes no dairy products, no eggs, and no honey as well.
Yeah.
Honey is technically considered an animal product because a bee is an animal, but some people will eat honey and that's fine. Right. That's their choice.
Yeah.
For me, being vegan has nothing to do with my health or nutrition, really. For me, being vegan has to do with being a really hardcore environmentalist. It like goes alongside with like buying all my clothes secondhand and I don't even know, like all those things.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with animal welfare. I went from vegetarian to vegan when I arrived in Montreal in 2012. And there was a dairy farm tour being offered to students, like a local dairy farm. And I decided, like, this is it. I've always been wondering what it's like in a dairy farm. And it was an award-winning dairy farm. And I decided, like, I'm going to go to this dairy farm and see what it's like and answer my questions. Oh. Anyway, like, I won't go into the details, but it made me really upset. And that's when I started transitioning towards a vegan diet. And I feel lucky that I'm a nutritionist because I think a lot of vegan activists like to make it seem as though being vegan is so easy and that anybody can do it and that there are absolutely no nutritional pitfalls and everybody is going to necessarily experience better health because you go vegan. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Being vegan is equally healthy to being non-vegan. And for a lot of diseases, it is actually better than being non-vegan. It reduces your risk by a lot. It reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease and of diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol.
Yeah, I always, whenever people are like, it reduces I'm like, listen, bitch, I work out 4 hours a day. I'm not worried about my heart disease. Like,
exactly.
I'm good.
Exactly.
I mean, that's real, but like not in my life. So I'm just like, okay.
Definitely.
But, okay, so I had a similar experience where I got caught behind a chicken truck in a traffic jam in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, where like the traffic is terrible.
Yes.
And I was 12 years old, 10, and I got caught behind this truck and the smell and just these feathers and these little beaks like sticking out. And again, like it's kind of tragic, but I was like, you know what? Not eating meat. I'm done. So I was vegetarian for 14 years.
Wow.
And actually I didn't go to like a degree granting circus school, but I went to a professional training program in the US and I was there for like 2 years and I wasn't getting stronger, was like really struggling. Shit. And one of my coaches was like, well, what are you eating? And I was like, well, I'm a vegetarian. And they were like, have you considered adding some meat to your diet? And I was like, I paid all this money and come all this way, may as well. And as soon as I added it back in, the gains that I made were so significant. And I'm wondering, again, like you said, like I wasn't very purposeful. I was just like, or my vegetarianism was like, I'm just not going to eat meat. And then whatever I ate in place of that was whatever it was. How should I have gone about it?
So your experience is definitely not a unique experience.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I've heard so many times that people try to go vegan or vegetarian, but because that's not the mainstream, there's not a lot of information out there about how to do it appropriately. And for that reason, I say, like, I don't necessarily want to promote veganism or vegetarianism as this like perfect diet. If you're going to do it, I think it's important to do it because you have a strong personal conviction about it. And it's also very important to know how to do it safely and effectively and to know how to replace the nutrients in meat. Because any time that you decide that you're going to remove something from your diet, you have to replace it with something that is comparable nutrient wise.
Right.
Like you can't just take meat out of your diet and eat everything else and expect to have the same level of health that you had before. You have to replace the meat with other things. You have to replace it with high protein, vegetarian protein sources. Because like if you're eating the exact same amount of meat and tofu, for example, the amount of tofu that you have to eat to get the same amount of energy is actually higher.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
You'll find yourself eating a lot more food. And some people are like kind of stressed about this or worried about it, like, oh my gosh, I'm eating so much more, when really that's just normal. Like, the reason why your body is telling you to eat more food is because you're eating foods that have less energy in them, that are less energy dense. And so you're going to need to eat more plant-based protein foods than you did meats.
I see. Interesting.
To like adequately replace it. I don't know if you've seen the documentary The Game Changers recently.
No. Okay. Is it on Netflix?
Yeah, it is on Netflix.
Great.
I just watched it this weekend, and it's all about plant-based diets and athletes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, because my follow-up question was going to be like, for people out there who are, you know, circus artists, so don't have a lot of money to hire a registered dietitian.
Oh my gosh.
Are there any good resources out there for people who want to go to a more plant-based diet? Like books, Game Changer on Netflix.
Okay, I really, really loved The Game Changers on Netflix.
Okay.
I thought the information was very credible and very accurate.
Okay, cool.
The thing I didn't love is I thought that they threw dietitians under the bus. They didn't show any vegan dietitians. They had one dietitian who was clearly hired by the meat industry to promote meat. And that was it.
What?
Yeah. And it's like, nutritionists are supposed to be nutrition professionals. But regardless, the information itself was good.
Okay, cool.
But I don't know that that would necessarily help somebody to transition to a plant-based diet in and of itself. You know what it did a really good job of illustrating? That vegan diets are equally good as non-vegan diets in terms of sustaining a high level of athletic performance. And that is what all of the studies show, that vegans and meat eaters have an equal athletic performance. So you don't have to worry that your performance is going to drop, unless of course you're like taking out the meat and you're not replacing it with plant protein sources.
So you do have to have... But you know, the thing that I'm kind of realizing as I'm doing my own research and talking to people and understanding is like, if you want to be a high performing athlete, like you can't be lazy about your diet.
True.
Like you have to be proactive in some way about what you're eating.
This is true.
And a lot of people ask me, how do I food prep if I'm lazy? Or how do I eat a vegan diet if I don't want to like eat vegetables? And I'm just kind of like, well.
Well, I would answer that question, like the latter question, by saying that a vegan diet, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're replacing meat with vegetables or that you're replacing dairy or eggs with vegetables. So if you're not eating vegetables, you could be a non-vegan who eats no vegetables, or you could be a vegan who eats no vegetables.
That's true. You could just eat Oreos all day.
Exactly. Sounds amazing. You could eat chickpeas, you could eat beans, you could eat carbohydrates, oatmeal, but you don't necessarily have to have vegetables.
Okay. And is this true across, there are people who just like metabolize food. Like I watch people who can drink like cream and like be 90 pounds. And then there are people who put on weight quicker.
Right.
Are there body types that respond better to vegetarianism or plant-based diets versus some that just need to? Because that was always my solution. I was like, well, I guess I'm just a person who needs to eat meat.
Right.
That was always my understanding of my body and myself. And like, I was like, maybe one day when I'm done with my career, I'll go back to vegetarianism, because I agree, like it's better for the whole planet to make those choices.
Right.
But I'm selfish and want a good circus career. I don't know.
My answer to that would be that you don't have to choose. But if you're going to choose, you certainly have to know how to do it the right way.
Okay.
And you're right, like not everybody has access to that information.
Right.
Like I wish I could just go into the details of vegan nutrition right now and just be like, take a B12 supplement. This is the type to take. It has to be chewable or sublingual.
Actually, that was going to be like one of the other questions a lot of people asked are, what is a good supplement, whether you've got a plant-based diet or not, for circus artists? Like, what are the ones... Someone phrased it really funny. They were like, what is a good supplement and what's just expensive pee?
Right.
Which I loved.
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to say that for vegans and vegetarians, it is recommended to take a vitamin B12 supplement.
Okay.
Across the board, that is extremely important.
Okay.
There just isn't enough dirt in our current environment for plant foods to have enough bacteria in them that will produce the vitamin B12. So we need to supplement with the vitamin B12.
Cool. Or go eat handfuls of dirt. That's so interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So the B12 is important.
B12.
Something that I have to mention about that is that there are many forms of vitamin B12. The type that you want to take as a vegan or vegetarian, it's cyanocobalamin. And the dose is different depending on whether you're taking it daily or whether you're taking it twice a week.
Okay.
And you don't want something that is swallowable. You want a chewable, or you want a sublingual, or you want a liquid, because the digestion process of B12 starts in the mouth. So you don't want it to be...
Whoa. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you just swallow it, you won't get all the benefits of it.
Yeah, you're less likely to get the benefits from it.
B12.
Okay, this is relevant for Canadians or anybody that lives above 33 degrees latitude. And
get out your maps. All right, cool.
If you live in a cold place, this is probably relevant for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In Canada, where I live in Montreal, 6 months of the year, the angle of the sun is such that the UVB rays can't get through. They won't penetrate the cloud layer to get to our skin.
Right.
And the reason why that's important is because vitamin D is produced in the skin when the UVB rays touch the cholesterol in our skin. It starts this reaction. So we could be outside during the winter completely naked for 24 hours, but those UVB rays are not coming through. So we can't produce our own vitamin D. So for that reason, 6 months of the year, between approximately October 1st and March 31st, everybody should be taking a vitamin D supplement.
Okay.
Yes.
And can that be swallowable?
Yes.
Or is that, okay.
Yes. Vitamin D can be taken on an empty stomach. It can be taken with food.
Vitamin D, like the fact that we are absorbing it through our skin is like blowing my mind right now. But like that's a part of nutrition, is like getting sunlight.
Yeah, it's true.
It's so neat.
It's true.
Okay, I gotta go get a vitamin D supplement.
Yeah. Vitamin D2 is vegan and vitamin D3 is not.
Can you overload on it? Like, can you take too much?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't want to be, I'm going to be saying from food plus diet together, just to be safe, I wouldn't exceed 2,000 international units a day.
Okay.
The recommendation for an adult is 600 international units a day, but there's no way that you're going to find a supplement that has 600.
Okay.
And 1 cup of milk, it doesn't matter what kind, soy milk, almond milk, cow's milk, cashew milk, all of those fortified milks, they have about 200 international units in 1 cup.
Okay.
So you can also get it from diet if you're somebody who really loves to drink a lot of milk. The reason why it's added to milk in Canada is because Canadians are so deficient.
That's so fascinating. Okay, so vitamin D, B12.
In terms of recovery, the most important thing for recovery is carbohydrates and protein.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Not necessarily in supplement form, but if that's the easiest thing for somebody to do, then it's better to do that than to not eat anything at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like I would say the best recovery meal would be a full-on meal with carbs, protein, and vegetables. But if you're not in a position to do that, you can do a snack as well.
Gotcha. Let's see. Okay. I don't know what... I've heard of collagen, but that's not a nutrient. What is collagen? Okay. What is collagen powder? And should this person put it in her coffee?
So collagen is a protein that's found within the human body and produced by the human body. It's in our bones. A really hard form is found in our bones. And then you also find different forms in other connective tissues like ligaments and tendons and even in our eyeballs. So collagen is a structural protein. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that if you were just to eat collagen, you wouldn't be able to digest it. So what supplement companies do is they break it down into like smaller...
Wait, why do you need to eat it if it's already in your bones? Or if we make it?
You don't need to eat it.
Great. I guess that answers the question.
Yeah. Okay. She doesn't need to put it in her coffee. If she would like to increase her collagen production naturally, she can eat foods that are rich in vitamin C, such as fruits and vegetables. Okay. And that will increase her natural collagen production. She doesn't need to supplement with it and put it in coffee.
Collagen, expensive pea. You heard it here first, folks. I love this. Just dispelling myths all over. The other thing people asked was about inflammation. Do foods cause inflammation? Are there foods you can eat that will decrease inflammation?
Are you talking about like inflammation at a cellular level or like bloating?
Let's go with inflammation at a cellular level first.
Okay.
Yeah, because I do suspect that those are two different things.
Yes, they are two different things.
Yeah.
So inflammation is the body's natural response to injury or illness. Okay. So if we have a cut or if we have an injury, our body will send a whole bunch of inflammatory signals, I suppose, to combat that injury, to help to heal it. But if we're in kind of a chronic state of inflammation, which can happen if we have a chronic disease, but it can also happen if we're underfed. So like inflammation can have multiple sources.
Okay.
It can even happen when you have a flu.
Okay.
So combating inflammation, if the reason why you have inflammation is because you're not eating enough food, eating more would help. If the reason why you have inflammation is because you have a chronic disease, eating foods that are going to help with that particular disease, depending on what it is, could help. But like as a general guideline in terms of combating inflammation, I want to give like 2 tips. One of them would be to increase your omega-3 intake.
Okay.
And so that would be eating things like ground flax seeds, because they need to be ground for your body to absorb the omega-3.
I love all this part, like the sorcery of it, where I'm just like, oh, okay, so not only do we need to eat these things, but we need to eat these things in this way.
Yes.
Which like blows my mind.
It's cool.
Anyway, yeah, it really is. Okay, so ground flax seeds.
Yes.
Okay. So turmeric is not,
turmeric is totally anti-inflammatory.
Cool.
Yes, so like cooking curry.
Great.
I know people like to put it in coffee too.
All right, so that you can put in your coffee instead of
collagen.
Perfect. It's on. Yeah, I have a friend also. Now I'm just like anecdotal, but she avoids nightshades, so eggplants, anything, tomatoes, those kinds of things.
Okay. Does she have an allergy?
Maybe she does have an allergy or something.
Okay.
But she's like, yeah, they cause inflammation in my body, and so I don't use them.
If she has an allergy to nightshades, yes, they would absolutely cause inflammation in her body.
Gotcha.
But for the general person, eating nightshades is absolutely not going to cause inflammation. In fact, it's probably going to be the opposite.
Okay, great, because I love tomatoes, so that's what I do.
But yeah, the second tip I was going to give about inflammation is that fruits and vegetables are anti-inflammatory. All fruits and vegetables, pretty much all plant foods, have anti-inflammatory properties, but the ones that have the most anti-inflammatory properties are going to be things that are brightly colored and things like berries.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So omega-3s, berries.
Yes.
Great. Basically, like, eat colorful foods is what I'm getting at. Okay, I want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. Inflammation. Yeah, the other question I guess I had along these lines, someone asked it as a joke, but I always get asked it myself, so I'm curious. Is there anything you can eat that will make you more flexible?
Okay.
Because we know, like, protein intake, especially at specific times, will make you, or help you gain muscle. Which will presumably make you stronger. Right. Is there anything you can do to make yourself more flexible?
Okay, not that I'm aware of.
Right.
But when I'm thinking about that question, something that comes to mind, I'm not saying this is going to help with flexibility, but I think staying hydrated can't hurt. I think that staying well hydrated is just a good principle in general. Whether it helps specifically with flexibility, I can't say. Sure. I don't know if any foods or beverages that are going to help with flexibility, no. But the first thing that does come to my mind is stay well hydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just started drinking, like I got an app on my phone that like reminds me to drink water every like 2 hours or something. And it has changed my life.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't realize how dehydrated I was in my life before I got this app. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm drinking so much water. And I feel great. Like my skin looks better. Everything's like, so yeah, water. Why? Why is water so awesome?
Oh my gosh. So hydration status is the single most important thing that you can do to improve your athletic performance.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, dude. Yes. Okay.
So hydration is composed of kind of 2 different components.
Okay.
One of them is drinking enough water.
Okay.
And the second one is, as an athlete, making sure that you have enough salt as well.
Sure. Okay.
Because the amount of salt that an athlete loses in just like a 1 hour period of training is about half the amount that a sedentary person is recommended to eat over the course of an entire day.
Wait, okay.
So like a sedentary person, it's recommended that you eat a maximum of about 1,500 to I can't remember. I want to say 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium.
Let's say 2,000 because that's a really easy number for me to...
That sounds good. Okay. 2,000.
Okay.
In an hour training session, you're going to lose...
I lose 1,000 milligrams?
Between 650 and 950 milligrams. Whoa. So almost half that. Yeah.
So do I salt my water? Like, what do I do?
Great question. Salt your food.
Okay.
Certainly salt your food. And if you're somebody that drinks a rehydration beverage, like a sports drink, that's going to have salt in it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I typically recommend it to people who have muscle cramps, like people who are constantly getting muscle cramps. They're waking up in the middle of the night with bad muscle cramps. That can be a sign that your sodium levels are too low.
Oh, interesting.
And adding salt to your food or drinking a sports drink can help with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if you're cramping in the middle of the night, you're probably missing some sodium from your diet.
Yes. Yeah. Like athletes don't have to be as concerned about their sodium intake as sedentary people. I'm not saying eat like only McDonald's for every single meal.
Right.
Like not only is that very high in sodium, but it's also not going to help your
kind of sounds like it goes
your
against
performance. Yeah, that's not necessarily the thing that's going to best optimize your performance. But I am saying that when you're cooking, you can absolutely add salt to your taste. You don't have to worry that, unless of course you already have high blood pressure, then at that point I would actually suggest seeing a nutritionist to make sure that your sodium intake and your potassium intake are nice and balanced.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. I got a question about, we've talked a lot about like professional athletes. If someone's doing this recreationally, if someone's a circus artist and they maybe go to class 2 times a week, 3 times a week, how does that change their diet? Because obviously there's got to be there's a spectrum, right? Of like the super sedentary person and then the like Olympic marathon runner or whatever.
Yes.
So where do you put them on the spectrum and how do you kind of like manage diet based on exercise? Do they eat different things on different days, or is it a calorie intake overall?
I don't typically, when I'm working one-on-one with people, I don't typically talk about calories. For the same reasons that we talked about earlier, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Just because being too focused on calories can lead somebody down the wrong path in terms of developing an eating disorder. In terms of whether that person should vary their intake on a day-to-day basis, I like to suggest that as a very tailored approach. So if you are training, if you're sedentary and suddenly you start training 3 days a week, for example, you are going to notice that you're more hungry. And some people are going to notice that it's really helpful for them to have a snack 2 hours before, or even a full-on meal 2 hours before they go and train. Some people are going to find it's going to be more helpful to have a snack after, and some people are going to find that both is going to be more helpful for them. In addition to that, what will happen as you increase or decrease your amount of physical activity is that you will notice that you're hungry more often than you were before. And some people come to me because they're so concerned, they're having crazy sugar cravings, and they start to get genuinely concerned that they're addicted to sugar. Usually what that means is that person hasn't been eating enough food. And so when our bodies aren't eating enough, the physiological response to that is to try to get us to eat as much as possible and try to get us to eat things that are very high in energy as much as possible. So people who are experiencing high sugar cravings, it doesn't mean that you have a sugar addiction, even though it genuinely feels like that. It probably means that your energy needs are higher than what you thought, and you need to be eating more earlier on in the day so that later on in the day you're not getting these intense cravings.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's very personalized.
My next question was going to be like, if we're looking at like a circus artist, what do you recommend like an average day look like for energy consumption or food consumption?
Gosh.
But like you said, it's so personalized that can you even do that?
I was going to say for circus artists, especially not at all.
Right.
Because I have people in my class that are in all different,
yeah, sure.
I don't know what you call that, but different fields.
Disciplines. And
different disciplines.
Totally. Like a juggler's nutrition needs may be totally different than an aerialist, totally different than
exactly
a porter, different than, sure.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. So because people's disciplines require such different energy expenditures, and because their body types are also different as well, and because, for example, an aerialist is going to have the
waist strap.
The waist strap.
Certain aerialists, not all, like, because aerialists are also trapeze artists or people who don't.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess whether or not you're going to be restricted around the waist at some point during your performance or during your practice, that's also going to affect potentially what you might want to eat before your training session and how liquid that's going to be.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I can't say.
Yeah.
That's hard.
No, yeah, totally. But I mean, everything you've given is such helpful information. I want to make sure I answer everyone's questions. We're going a little over time, but I don't think anyone will care. Dun, dun, dun. How many carbs do I actually need to train?
More than you think?
More than you think. It seems to be like the summaries I'm taking from this are like, drink water all the time. You're probably underfed. Mm-hmm. Most people aren't eating enough.
Yes.
Which is, well, I guess, and we're talking about a very specific population, right?
Yes.
So most people are not eating enough.
I mean, it depends, right? Like if this question is coming from a person who primarily eats carbs, doesn't eat a lot of protein, doesn't eat a lot of vegetables, then I would say, okay, how can we... Actually, I can kind of answer this question.
Oh, cool.
So for an athlete who's doing intense training, you want about half. This is just a general guideline, okay?
Yeah. Totally.
But you want about half of your meal to be composed of complex carbohydrate-rich foods. So those types of foods would include things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, pasta, bread, quinoa, barley, buckwheat.
Oh, what are your favorite cookbooks?
Good.
Like,
you know what?
Yeah, tell me.
I don't really use cookbooks. Yeah.
Escandalo.
I know. I use food blogs. So some of my favorite food blogs, oh my gosh. So my absolute favorite food blog is a dessert blog. It's by Chocolate Covered Katie.
Go on.
Yeah, it's by Chocolate Covered Katie, and it is a quote unquote healthy dessert blog. And she is vegan, so pretty much all of her recipes are vegan. One of the things I don't love about it is that she has like the nutrition facts, like the calories and stuff like that. Like I'm not so into that. But regardless, the recipes themselves taste amazing. And I do think that she's really good at taking a recipe, making a healthier version of it, and making it taste really, really good.
Okay, cool.
So I like her. I've had a lot of successes with her recipes. I also really love the food blog Oh She Glows.
Okay.
It's by a Canadian, Angela Liddon.
Okay.
I really love her blog as well. She actually previously struggled with disordered eating, and she posts about that as well, which I think is really enlightening for anybody who might be struggling with an eating disorder to read about her recovery story and maybe relate to it.
Totally.
So she also does plant-based recipes.
Cool.
And I think they're delicious and great. Another blog that I like a lot is Minimalist Baker. And I think that I might get some hate, perhaps, from some very hardcore vegans because she recently stopped being plant-based and she decided to go towards eating meat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So she does have meat on her blog.
Okay.
But she also has a very large selection of nice plant-based recipes.
Cool.
The only thing that I would say about like any recipe that's plant-based or any blog that's plant-based, be sure to add an adequate amount of plant-based protein. I've seen some recipes out there that are just carbs and vegetables. You need to add plant-based protein to your meals if you want to be healthy, if you want to feel satisfied, if you want to meet your protein requirements, if you want to feel full.
So, because someone asked about this too, protein supplements, protein bars, whey protein, plant-based protein. What are your non-plant-based and plant-based, what are your thoughts on them? Do you think you should get them from natural sources? Is it okay to add a whey protein shake? Like, what do you recommend?
I love this question. So I want to say first that a protein supplement, regardless of your diet, is absolutely not necessary. Nobody needs to have a protein supplement, A, to meet their protein needs, or B, to be healthy. That said, sometimes it is the absolute easiest way to get enough protein into your diet. You're just taking the scoops, you're mixing it into water, or you're grabbing a bar and you're eating it. Yeah. And it's easy and it's convenient.
Yeah.
And it's better to do that than not to eat anything, or better to do that than to worry about whether you're getting enough food in your day.
Okay.
So it's absolutely not necessary, no. But if you want to add that to your diet because it's really easy for you and you don't have a lot of time, why not?
Cool.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah, I guess. All right. So last question, because we're at about an hour.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you're still... Or what advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
Gosh. I feel like my career took a really long time to finally evolve into what I wanted it to be. Like, I realized later that I wanted to work with athletes. Like, it wasn't until the end of my internship that I was like, wow, I love working with athletes. This is definitely a group that I'm interested in. I guess it would just be to trust that everything will fall into place.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Tara, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're so welcome. It was so much fun.
Yay! Awesome. That was my interview with Tara Gallimore. I want to first give a shout out to everyone on Instagram who asked such great questions on my story. I popped on about a week ago and just wrote, "What questions would you like me to ask a circus nutritionist?" And I got so many great responses. So every once in a while I'll do that. I'll source questions from you guys out there. And the best way for me to find you is if you follow me at _artist_athlete on Instagram, or if you become a Patreon, patreon.com/theartistathlete. So I've recorded this so many times trying to get it right, trying to say what I want to say and how I want to say it without alienating anyone or any institution. This interview really made me think about how sometimes I will rationalize away overtraining or undereating, even though there is so much science to support adequate recovery and a healthy diet. They increase athletic performance, and that's not surprising. The thing that's devastating, I think, about this whole thing is what's standing in the way of encouraging healthy practices are really antiquated beliefs and beauty standards. And these are proven to be unhealthy and have oversight in other areas of entertainment and art. In fact, even in the fashion industry, which is notorious for creating really unhealthy standards around beauty, there are actual laws now that standardize the body mass index for models in Italy and Spain. And in France, modeling agencies can be fined unless a doctor first approves a model is healthy enough to work. And these steps are taken with good reason. A 2011 report showed that anorexia has the highest mortality rate of any mental health disorder. So that's more than depression, more than psychosis. Anorexia has the highest mortality rate of any mental health disorder. So when maybe well-meaning coaches or management or talent scouts suggest to 18-year-olds that they need to lose weight instead of emphasizing talent or hard work or athletic performance and making nutrition goals around that, it's actually quite detrimental, not only to the art form, but to the individual artists. And I think that needs to be examined. If you want to find out more about Tara Gallimore, you can visit her. She is on Instagram at Plant A Nutrition. That's PLANTAE Nutrition on Instagram. She doesn't have a website yet, but she does do live consults in Montreal, and she's also available for telephone consultations throughout Canada. She does not practice in the US. She's not licensed in the US, but reach out to her if you have questions or need inspiration. She's got a really cute page on Instagram. And as always, as I've said about 6 times in this episode, I'm on Instagram at _artist_athlete. I've got a big challenge giveaway thing going on right now to launch my new ebook. So go check that out. I'm also on Patreon, patreon.com/theartistathlete, and my Facebook. Yeah, no one uses that anymore, right? Anyway, I'm there, The Artist Athlete, and my website is theartistathlete.com. Oh my God, it's getting late. I'm delirious. I need to talk at you next week, friends, fans, and enemies. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell, and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete Podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So, if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space, and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and slings and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.